Okay, so now, the problems. It is difficult to prove that psi phenomena in general exist, including IIC, and these are some reasons why. So one of them is the idea that many scientists adhere to a materialist perspective. Materialism being the idea that matter comes first, and everything, including consciousness, can only exist because matter was here first. So instead of saying, oh, this phenomena is interesting, I don't know what the mechanism is, but let's study it, instead they're like, no, there's clearly not a mechanism for me to get matter from my brain to that dog, therefore this does not exist. Shout out to homeopathy. So that's one problem with psi phenomena in general. And then scientists with a materialist perspective tend to think that psi phenomena can't exist, and when evidence for psi arises, so when there's evidence that indicates that it does exist, then they move the goalposts. So there are actually multiple studies and meta-analyses for various psi-type phenomena, and many of them use protocols that are well accepted in other disciplines like psychology, for example, showing that there seems to be something that we can't explain, but it doesn't matter. Everybody that publishes in those fields gets accused of errors and bias and even outright fraud. And sometimes papers just get rejected before they can get peer-reviewed. They can't even get peer-reviewed because nobody wants to associate themselves with fringe science. So that's a problem in trying to prove that stuff like animal communication exists. But then, even if you're open to the idea of psi phenomena existing, there's still a problem in proving it exists. And this paper lays out an interesting paradox. So in it, he talks about how, okay, when we do research, we assume that the researcher and the subject are separate things, right? Okay, cool. We've established that. We're going to do our experiment. Hey, our experiment proves that psi exists, and humans can interact with our environment in ways that transcend space and time. Cool. Not so cool, because if that is true, then the researcher and the subject are not in fact separate. So we have just invalidated the very framework that we used to prove the thing to begin with, and it just on and on and on and on. So, difficult to prove. Now, even if we accept that psi phenomena are a possibility, even if we accept that IIC might be a possibility, we're probably not going to prove it because there are people out there that can't even agree on whether animals are conscious or not. They say, oh, it's anthropomorphic of us to think that animals could be conscious. Is that anthropomorphic? Or is it the height of anthropocentrism to just say, oh, consciousness only arrived in the evolutionary tree when humans sprang up? Like, really? Really? So we're not there yet in terms of science agreeing on whether animals exhibit consciousness. This year, this New York Declaration on Animal Consciousness came out, and it was a big deal because a bunch of scientists said, hey, we think that mammals and birds are probably conscious, and invertebrates might be conscious, and maybe we should consider that. And that, like, it was reported all over the news, and like that was a big deal. There's still no consensus on even whether animals are conscious. So it's a long way to animal communication from there. And if animals are not considered conscious, then obviously IIC can't be possible. Okay, say we've accepted that animals are conscious. This is where we are. Thank you. This is where we are in animal behavior research. This is the cutting edge of animal communication research here. And I don't mean animal communication, psychic animal communication, but like, can we communicate with animals in a Western mindset? So this is Stella. Stella's owner is a speech-language pathologist, and her specialty was working with nonverbal children. And she would teach nonverbal children to communicate using these buttons that, when pressed, would say a word, like outside or bathroom or something like that. So she thought, well, I'll just teach my dog to do the same thing. And so then the button thing, I presume many of you have seen these buttons, right? So it's a big deal now. Like, you can go buy buttons on Amazon, and there's videos all over, and people showing dogs. And so somebody studied it. And they looked at, okay, researchers and citizen scientists, and they used both buttons and just plain old spoken words. And their question was, will dogs respond with the appropriate behavior when we use a food-related word, a play-related word, or an outside-related word? So what they found was that for both play-related words and outside-related words, regardless of whether who was doing the talking and whether it was a button or they were speaking the word, that for play and outside words, the dog would do the correct behavior. So their conclusion is, dogs can be taught to associate words to their outcomes in the real world and respond appropriately. Now, I'm sorry, any dog owner can tell you that if you say the word leash or walk, to having a detailed conversation with your dog about his or her likes and preferences and whatnot. So, even if you think that IIC is a thing, and there's still issues in proving it, as is demonstrated by this. Two people